You're watching BCTV. We're all about Branford. You're watching BCTV, Branford Government Television, a service of Branford Community Television. This program is brought to you in part through the support of the town of Branford.
Good evening. My name is Peter Basserman. I'm chairman of Branford's Inland Wetland Commission. Today is March 14th. It is 7 o'clock. This is a regular meeting of the Inland Wetland Commission. It is being conducted under Public Act 22-3. BCTV is recording. We certainly thank them for their community involvement in recording these sessions. Katie, you're okay with recording at this point?
Yep, we are currently recording.
Great. All right, I'll do a roll call. First with the commissioners and then staff. Commissioner Goklowski.
Commissioner Goklowski present.
Commissioner Finaro.
Commissioner Finaro present.
Commissioner Boda.
Oh. Are you getting sound from me?
Yeah. I am now. Thank you.
Yeah. Present, Boda.
Commissioner Armrod.
Commissioner Armrod present.
Commissioner Papantotis.
Commissioner Papantotis present.
Let's see. Inland Wetland Agent Frederick.
Present.
And Associate Blanchette.
Present.
Great. Let's see, we have 6 commissioners, so everyone on the call is seated and can participate and vote. First up we have is the minutes for approval from February 22nd, which was a regular meeting. It was the had the public hearing. Those were sent out to the commissioner. It's also on the town's website in the Dropbox as well. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
Commissioner Papantotis, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the February 22nd meeting.
Is there a second that follows?
Commissioner Goklowski, I second that motion.
Any discussion on those minutes? Okay, I'll take I guess a vote for that. Commissioner Boda.
Commissioner Boda, aye.
Commissioner Finaro.
Commissioner Finaro, I think I need to not vote on that. I wasn't there at the meeting.
So you're abstaining?
Abstaining.
Commissioner Armrod.
Commissioner Armrod, aye.
Commissioner Papantotis.
Commissioner Papantotis, aye. Commissioner
Goklowski.
Commissioner Goklowski, aye.
Commissioner Basserman, aye. On the agenda, the next item up is a public hearing, which is a continuation of our last meeting. We are not going to have any discussion this evening. It's continued until our last meeting in the month, March 28th. It was put on the agenda so that anybody that was looking to participate would hopefully recognize with the agenda notation that they need not attend this evening. Now we have an application for review, Inland Wetland 240201, 380 Shore Drive, a 1-story art studio with support space and a breakfast nook. I think there was some additional information that was needed on this application. Jamie, can you give us an update?
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent. So the commission wanted to see drainage management for the addition that was proposed. We've received a revised plan that does add dry wells And I believe we do have somebody present to present that plan and go over any questions the commission may have. So I will hand it over to them, and then if there's any questions for staff, I can follow up with those.
This is Commissioner Vasco. Was that the only outstanding issue for this particular
So-
application, Jamie?
The other outstanding issue was confirmation as to whether or not the appropriate fee had been paid. I think initially on the application fee, the total area of disturbance might have been slightly underestimated. So possibly $16 would be due if they went up to the next bracket. So we can have the applicant confirm whether or not that's the case, and if there is that outstanding $16, and if so, we can see how the commission wants to handle that.
Great. Floor is yours, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Everybody can hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes, okay. Just for the record, my name is Matthew Bruton. I'm a PE in the state of Connecticut, employed by BL Companies at 355 Research Parkway in Meriden, Connecticut. So first to the fee, I did double check Jamie's calculations about it being represented. And I do agree with her calculations that I believe it should be higher. I did confer with the client and the applicants that they will pay that additional $16 fee. They were not able to come down to Jamie's office today to do that, but they've committed that that's fine, and they will pay that fee. Mr. Chairman, if you mind, I'll just share my screen real quick, show you the change since last time. Just again for orientation, I'll zoom in here. Shore Drive along the bottom here. Zoom in a little bit further. This is the existing home. This is the proposed addition, including a deck in this hatched area here. The pond on the property, off the property and slightly on the property is down where my mouse is right here, just to refresh your memory. So if you remember from last time, there is a small increase in impervious area with this addition of approximately 30 square feet. So that is coming from, to just point out here, the addition is mainly going over the driveway in the rear of the property and also over two existing garage sheds. Those are obviously coming down. Again, still there's a 30 square foot increase. I'm talking with the applicants and the architect. They're happy to provide precast concrete dry wells, one on each corner of the building here. As you can see, they're 900 gallons each. Also detailed on the plan, as you can see here. So it's a nice perforated, large diameter precast concrete structure that the roof leaders can be directed into. Just to give you guys a sense of the capacity of these, a 2-inch storm over the additional 30 square feet would generate about 37 gallons of water. So these are more than adequate to not only account for the increase in impervious, but more as well. So those are pointed out here on each corner. I did remark last time that there is known ledge on the property. It is called out on the survey in this area. I did look at the USDA web soil survey mapping. They do call out this property and the surrounding as a Branford Holyoke complex, which is mainly a gravelly, loamy sand with infiltration. So barring any ledge in these particular areas, they should be able to be installed. If they do encounter some ledge in this area, obviously we'd be looking to make a field change to still install them, but maybe relocate them slightly to avoid ledge if it's encountered. And when I spoke with Jamie earlier today, the goal obviously of these would be to capture and infiltrate the roof runoff. And then if they're at capacity, the goal would be for them to overtop and then sheet flow with topography back to the pond. So again, trying to get that sheet flow running through the vegetation, getting additional groundwater recharge. So we're not changing any drainage patterns on site or anything that will affect the neighbors. So that's kind of a quick recap of the plan since we last met, but I'm happy to answer any questions you guys may have.
Commissioner Goklowski, the question I have is, you're asking for an art studio with support spaces and a breakfast nook. When I was reading your letter to us, I believe it stated in there that the property owners are looking to eventually live in that area of the residence. So so they're going to have a full kitchen there. They're going to have, is it going to be a bathroom? Is it septic or city water, sewers over there? Are they going to put a bathroom in that addition?
Yes, so Mr. Commissioner, my understanding, and I understand that I'm not the architect, but my understanding is that you're correct that this is an addition for the owners as an art studio. The support space is another lower bathroom. There is an existing kitchen in the house. So the goal would be, as the owners age in place, that they would have this art studio portion. This addition could be a first floor master if they so want it to be. So the other, kitchen and bathrooms are located downstairs. This art studio could eventually be a first floor master.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
This is Commissioner Boda. I'm looking at your construction entrance on the revised erosion. Am I looking first? I want to make sure I'm looking at the correct plan from, it says revised February 15th.
It should be revised
Dated
March 12th.
February 15th, Commissioner Boda, but there's a revision date in the border here that says March 8th.
Oh yeah, March 8th.
The file name, is the file name March 8th?
The file name in the Dropbox, it is 6 revised plan, March 12th, 2024. We put the date we received it rather than the actual revision date.
Okay, hold on. So, all right, so I'm still seeing, so the construction entrance, I
think I know where you're going and can
I'm very confused about what I'm seeing.
I can probably help you out by sharing photos from when I went out to the site. So I'm going to steal the screen share real quick. So can everyone see the photo?
Yes.
Pond off to the right, driveway going around to the back. This is the little bump out off of the house. So the anti-tracking pad is proposed approximately, I don't remember exactly, but approximately in this area here. So you can see it's a crushed stone driveway as is. So I think it allows them to continue to use their driveway up here as normal and make sure that there's protection in place for the activity occurring in the back.
And again, Commissioner Boda, is there a narrative on, you're just really close to the pond, and for that to be the construction entrance, that's often where we see a lot of tracking. I can see that it's a tracking pad, but those still get gunked up. So looking for the narrative on the maintenance of the sediment and erosion control plan.
So Commissioner Boda, we've obviously provided details on the side of the plan here that Jamie's showing now. In addition to that tracking pad on the gravel driveway, we also do show silt fence and straw wattle. So we have 2 barriers between not only the tracking pad and the pond, but the rest of the construction in terms of the excavation expected for the foundation in addition. So, we do show 2 barriers between the pond and us. I did not provide a narrative. I just obviously provided details that and this would be expected to have the owner maintain these until the site can be stabilized. There's not a lot of area here in terms of disturbance, but, we did show enough, I think, to show protection to this adjacent pond.
Is Commissioner Basserman, where does that pond outlet to, or does it not?
So, Mr. Commissioner, if you can see, or Jamie can point out on this map, there's an outlet pipe to the pond at the tip there that is closest to Shore Drive, and I believe it outlets to open water on the shore there.
Yeah, I think it outlets west of drawing a blank, Orchard Hills. Is that what that this is town property, I can't think of what it's called. Katie, can you help me out? Oh, I have it. Okay, I thought yeah, okay.
It's Orchard
Oh,
House.
here's a bigger one because I thought this question would come up. Here's the outlet, and it outlets ultimately to this wetland complex, which I don't know if the entirety, like the upland portion's probably got some inland, but this is tidal, and you can kind of see open water over here.
This is Commissioner Bassman. Again, is that a pipe that outlets?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a pipe that inlets, and then there's a pipe that outlets.
Okay.
And you have a picture of the outlet. I might have gone the wrong way for that. This is the outlet pipe. So you can't actually see the pipe, but you can see the stone head wall.
Jamie, can you show a picture of the pond? There's the two pipes. Is that an outlet? The one in the left-hand corner?
The outlet's over here.
Okay.
Right. Okay. This is Commissioner Bassman. So Jamie, at this point, there's no outstanding information on this application?
So I think based on what we've kind of discussed tonight, there's the $16 application fee. And then also I don't know if Commissioner Boda was satisfied with the response on the erosion control maintenance, or if she was looking for additional details to be provided on that. It does have the construction entrance and the detail on how to construct the construction entrance, and it has the silt fence and the wattle. It is a smaller project, so theoretically construction time shouldn't be too long, but we all know how projects sometimes do what they do. So I don't know, that might be something that the commission would be okay doing as a condition of approval if the additional information was wanted, and or I mean, it is really close to the pond, so I do think this is appropriate to have as a commission review and permit process. But alternatively, if the commission was comfortable, it could possibly be an agent review based off of commission guidance. One other thing that I would add is if the commission is considering acting on the application tonight, I didn't update the staff report, but I would suggest 2 additional possible conditions for consideration to what I have in the staff report. One being that the outstanding portion of the fee of $16 be submitted prior to start of site work or issuance of the building permit. And the other one being that documentation that the stormwater management has been installed per the approved plans shall be submitted to the inland wetland office.
This is Commissioner Boda. I was gonna, I appreciate I appreciate your coming back with the dry wells, and I'm wishing that I had tuned more into the construction entrance at the last meeting, so that you didn't have to come back another time. But I don't, the commission, that's a lot for like a condition of approval is like a small detail. If there was something within a narrative for the sediment and erosion control plan and the monitoring of it, that seems appropriate for a condition of approval or the outstanding portion of the fee. But an entire narrative around the sediment and erosion control monitoring feels like us creating the application, and that is something that we've been given guidance that's not something that we should be doing. So I would be very happy to have this come back. I think right now, overall, I see it in a positive light, but I want to make sure that the application is fully complete. And you know, these plans they're great plans, and we sometimes see, or many times see, that when they're implemented in the field, if they're not super clear. I mean, we already have this note around, you talked about there being some decision on site if the dry well couldn't go where it's supposed to go. And I've been on long enough to see things like that go rather poorly. So I think it's really helpful if all of it's documented, and then we can approve it as is. So that's what I would be looking for tonight.
So, Commissioner, just for clarity, you know, we've obviously been in front of this board with quite large commercial projects, right, where there's complex earthwork, a lot of grading, a lot of fills, long duration projects. Obviously, this is not that. So the narrative I would be putting together for you would be, prior to the start of construction, contractor to install erosion control devices prior to work commencing, those to be maintained throughout the duration of the construction project and to be maintained until the site is stabilized. It's a 3-sentence narrative. I'd hate to have to delay the applicant another 2 or 3 weeks to keep them from getting their building permit. So if it could be handled as a condition of approval, I know that they would appreciate it, given the small nature of the project. And I know obviously Jamie and staff, you know, are on top of everything that happens in town. Be happy to review with them too if that gave you a sense of comfort.
This is Commissioner Goklowski. I'm personally also a little uncomfortable because when you're talking about excavation and digging a foundation very close to that area of the pond, it's a little concerning. I know the property's been there for a lot of years. I know the pond has been there for a lot of years, but we're looking to protect what's already there. And I know oversights can happen on a construction site very easily, whether it's big or small. And I happen to agree with Commissioner Boda that we probably should have it spelled out a little better. So when we are approving an application, everybody's on board and everybody's clearly understood.
And Mr. Burton, I think another thing that I would just off like the top of my head add to that narrative would be something along the lines of, in the event of X storm, the site is inspected within 24 hours. Really what we're aiming to do is to protect that pond as well. And so that, you know, I'm sure you know, our mandate is to monitor and protect wetland and water courses, not just in the long term, but in the short term during the construction. So we just want to make sure that as the construction is happening, we don't have a blowout. And we've had some really crazy rains, right? You live in Connecticut, you know, it's been really insane. And so I think being really mindful that those sediment and erosion controls, they fail. And I know that you have a second one in there in order to address that. And still, in the event that something happens, that, you know, there's an immediate inspection within so many hours, there's notice to our staff. And I think that that's also something you could probably review with Jamie before coming back, a couple of weeks before coming back. And we could potentially, because we've done so much work on this, maybe we don't wait until next month. We do it 2 weeks from now with the next meeting. That seems like it would be plenty of time for you to get it done and check in with Jamie.
This is Commissioner Bassman. So we have 2 commissioners that have expressed some concern. I think the comment that Commissioner Boda made regarding the next meeting only being 2 weeks away, and the amount of information that's been requested seems to be able to be completed within that 2-week time frame. Do you, sir, have an issue with waiting the 2 weeks to provide that information?
I don't think I have a choice, Mr. Commissioner, so I will be back in 2 weeks.
I think you're very cooperative and I appreciate it. All right. Stop. We have an enforcement item, notice of violation, 142 Chestnut Street. Removal of vegetation and earthwork without a permit to conduct regulated activities. I think there's been some additional information that I've seen in the Dropbox. Jamie, can you bring us up to speed with where we're at on this application? On this enforcement?
No, yeah, notice of violation. So, I'm not sure if we've got the owner on the call. So at the last meeting where this was discussed, the commission requested that the owner provide some additional information, including soils testing and wetland investigation from a soil scientist, and an assessment of any impacts to wetlands and water courses, and also an analysis of how things are flowing through the site, what the hydrology is of the water courses that are on the site, and where everything is flowing. So we've received a letter from Paul Muniz with the soil testing results. I have not received anything from the soil scientist. And I'm guessing from the unmuted phone that we do have Kevin O'Neill on the call. So I don't know if he wants to provide additional information regarding the status of that additional information.
Yes, Kevin O'Neill. Yeah, Jamie, we did have the soil scientist out there. Right now, he's not complete with his report.
Okay, so the soil scientist has been out, but he hasn't been able to write anything up yet and get it submitted to you.
Correct.
Do you have any idea when you'll be receiving that documentation?
I'm going to say probably next week.
So given that information, does the commission want to table discussion until that information has been received? Do you want to review the soil testing information that has been provided?
You know, this is Commissioner Bassman. I think to only look at a portion without the complete picture would be a little bit more obtuse than if we had everything tied up at one time. Is that the only information that we've asked the applicant to provide?
So the other thing the commission asked was for wattles to be installed along the drainage ditch that is central to the site, which I received pictures that they have been installed. I have not made it back out to the site. So if the commission would like, I can make sure I have an inspection of those erosion controls prior to the March 28th meeting. And then maybe we can look at everything all at once. The soil samples did come back with elevated levels of iron and what's the other one? Manganese, I think. However, the report identifies that they are not that they're typical levels that you would see in Connecticut geology. So in summary, it does say iron and manganese concentrations in the fill material are normal and are consistent with local geology. And then it goes on to say iron concentrations and manganese concentrations in water, however, are higher in the water entering the area from off-site and entering the eastern boundary stream than the concentrations in water in the eastern stream and down gradient of the southern swale. So basically saying, well, there may be elevated levels in the water. They're more elevated coming into the site than they are in the area that the commission had asked for analysis to be conducted.
This is Commissioner Bassman. Does anybody want to review the information that we have to date, or are are we looking to push this to the next meeting, which is on the 28th?
This is Commissioner Voda. I agree with you that seeing it piecemeal, I don't think is going to be helpful. I don't think that we should do this with the next meeting, but rather we shouldn't do it with the 38 Howard public hearing.
So you're thinking
Oh, a
April
month.
11th?
Yeah, okay.
Yep, sure. And yeah. Wait, can I just ask you?
That's a good That's a good recommendation. Yeah.
Can I ask, can I just ask about the time for 38, because it's a public hearing? Can I ask you about the timing? Would we have to hear it, if it stayed open, would we have to hear it again on the 11th in order to meet the timelines?
So to continue it past the 28th, the commission would need to request a continuance. So it would depend on the applicant's willingness to provide a continuance.
But if they provided a continuance, we could get a 30-day continuance, or we would only
depending on what they're willing to provide. I can't speak to that, you know. Theoretically, you could have up to 65 days of continuance, but what they're willing to consent to, I don't know.
That answers my question, because the 65, so the 65 days are there. So what I'm trying to avoid is that the 38 Howard, the public hearing is continued and we're in a pinch and we need to hear it April 11th, and then this on the 11th. I'd rather not do that. I'd rather have this separate of that. So the 11th sounds fine.
April 11th. Is that what you're saying?
That's yeah.
April 11th would be not the next meeting, but the meeting after that.
Yeah.
And I can go out and check the erosion controls just to make sure that they're addressing the concerns the commission had prior to that date. Mr. O'Neill, does April 11th work for you?
Sure.
And then also keep in mind the commission had requested that the soil scientists attend the meeting where the report's being reviewed. So try and make sure that your soil scientist will be available for that evening as well.
Okay.
And if not, let me know sooner rather than later so I can start working that out with you.
Okay.
All right. Any other
comments on 142 Chestnut? All right, next up, another violation, 72 Parish Farm and 110 High Meadow Road, regulated activity without a permit. Looks like a status update, Jamie.
Yeah, Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. So they were to submit an application. We have received an application. It's under applications for review. I think this might be something the commission would be okay with me handling administratively. So I don't know if you want to take a quick peek at it now or wait and see where we're at when we get to applications for receipt, and see if you want to take a quick look at it to see if it's something that needs to stay on your agenda or if it's something that you would like for staff to handle administratively.
This is Commissioner Bassman. Why don't we just table the NOV for 72 Parish until we discuss the application that we've received?
Okay.
Okay. Notice of violation, 38 Howard Avenue, retaining wall and associated activities. As noted previously, the public hearing has been continued until March 28th. And we agreed that we would talk about the NOV at that time frame and not before. So that item continues to be tabled until the 28th of this year. Item D, consider whether to issue cease and correct orders relative to regulated activity conducted without a permit at 34 Howard Avenue and 38 Howard Avenue. The activity subject to notice of violation sent in April of 2023. Again, given the fact that this is part of the discussion in the public hearing, we tabled that to March 28th, and we'll consider that at that time. Other business, 1151 West Main Street in the wetland, 191101 Bank Grocery Store and associated site improvements. I think we had some discussion on this last time. Mitigation area, the request to modify the plan. Jamie, can you tell us where we're at on this?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland agent. So the commission has kind of been in correspondence with the property owner and design professionals about the completion of the monitoring area, the mitigation or completion of the mitigation area and monitoring of the mitigation area, and that the mitigation area doesn't fully reflect what was approved, and that adjustments needed to be made. So a revised plan has been submitted for the commission to consider. I have indicated that I think the commission may want additional information. I can get more into the information that I've suggested the commission may want, but I think it might be beneficial for you guys to see the plan at first, see if you have any initial thoughts or comments on your end, and then if you want, I can let you know what the comments I've provided have been. So this is the Aldi and Chase Bank site, and the owner has been having the monitoring done by the soil scientists, and they've also hired All Habitat to conduct invasive species management. So without further ado, unless the commission has any intro questions for me, I'll hand it over to the project engineer.
Hello again. Again, for the record, Matthew Bruton, PE, State of Connecticut, employed by BL Companies, 355 Research Parkway in Meriden, Connecticut. So I'll just share my screen again, Mr. Chairman. So a good intro from Jamie there. The plan that I've submitted is on the screen. So this is the back half of the plan. Obviously, Chase and all these would be down page off the screen here. So forgive me, I wasn't part of the original application, and just for clarity, the owner of the property that went into this is no longer the owner there in place. That's obviously to getting this to match your conditions of approval. So the original application.
Can you just repeat that? You broke up for a second. Can you just go back like 3 sentences?
Sure. Sorry. I wasn't the original engineer on the project, so apologize if I don't know the full history, but obviously BL worked on this. And just for clarity, the owner of the property now was not the owner that started this project. It has been sold, and that new owner is committed to, obviously complying with your conditions of approval. So obviously in the rear of this property, there was a proposed wetland creation. And then obviously, there was a continuing commitment to remove invasive species. Jamie said that's been done and is ongoing. BL did provide an as-built of this area to show that the grades were constructed to the approved plans. But unfortunately, obviously, the wetland creation didn't take hold as desired because of the lack of groundwater. The wetland scientist who is not here tonight is Davison Environmental, Matt Davison. I couldn't be here. He could be here at subsequent meetings as necessary, but he has been on the site. He has been monitoring, obviously, this to see how it's progressed since construction has been complete. So his recommendation, because obviously groundwater is the key element for this wetland creation, we looked at options to dig further, to plant, do a couple different items to kind of get closer to what the commission and what the plans initially showed. Unfortunately, if you guys remember, I believe the rear of this property does have contaminated materials from construction projects, decades earlier. So the wetland scientist's recommendation wasn't to excavate further to chase groundwater in hopes of finding it to create this, but to rather provide additional plantings that would create this habitat back here that would be complementary to the wetlands 1 and wetland 2 that you do see on the plan. This area obviously will never be developed. It's a rear property. It's contaminated. It's next to the train tracks. So we thought this was, kind of a feasible alternative. This does show continued invasive species control, conservation seed mix, 29 additional trees and 40 additional shrubs in this area. That's the plan that's detailed in front of you. So that's kind of a quick highlight, but I'm happy to answer questions, and I'm not expecting obviously any vote tonight, so I'd be happy to come back obviously with the witnesses as well to discuss further, but I didn't want to have this linger, and obviously the owner is antsy to kind of get you guys satisfied and, you know, can plant this spring if the season is appropriate. If not, he'd have to wait until the fall when he gets your buy-in. So
this is Commissioner Bassman. I guess I'm not understanding this correctly. The mitigation, the area that did not perform as expected, I think you said it was the lack of water, basically, and I assume that means that whatever was planted there didn't take hold.
So some species, it's not a barren area, Mr. Commissioner, Mr. Chairman. There, if you've gone back there or seen it, or if Jamie can concur, plantings have taken hold there, but not all of the ones, because obviously some of the plantings that were selected obviously were more of a wet foot tolerant type species. So some of those ones didn't thrive as intended. There is obviously, it's not a barren area. There's these species that were more drought tolerant and more upland did take hold. They are there. And then the invasive species control is ongoing. Those reports have been getting to Jamie as specified, I believe. So it's not a dirt pile back there by any means, but we're committing to adding a lot more vegetation there since obviously the initial goal didn't come to fruition, despite obviously having it built per the plan and having a good sense of where groundwater was when we started this.
I assume, Commissioner Bassman, I assume that what'd you say, 40 additional plantings, that they are of the more drought tolerant type?
Yeah, I'll show you the plant schedule up here, Mr. Chairman. So there's red maple trees, gray birch trees, and the shrubs are Somerset and gray dogwood. These were plants drawn on the plan by our landscape architect, but recommended by Matt Davison, our wetland scientist.
And as a follow-up, the species that did survive so far, are they in that mix that you just showed me, or was this a totally different list of plantings than what is in place today?
Oh, that's a good question,
Jamie
Chairman.
Frederick and the wetland agent. I'll kind of grab that one. So in the lower portion of the wetland creation area, it was a lot of plugs that was proposed, and then there were pin oaks planted around the upper limits of that wetland creation area. So essentially, this would be to replace an area that was planted with plugs. They would have been, wetland species that do well in wetland areas. So if they're not having that wetland hydrology, they're not going to do well. So a lot of the plugs in that area didn't take off, were outcompeted by invasives. And while those invasives are being managed, we want to make sure that something appropriate is growing in place, but also make sure that it, whatever is being established is approved by the commission. So in Matt Davison's report from one of his monitoring sessions, he did identify for his recommendations, he said invasive species control should be initiated. A plan for control should be developed and executed by a licensed pesticide applicator familiar with invasive control. So that was conducted and is being implemented by all habitats. And that was reviewed by the commission sometime in the last year. And then the other recommendation was addressing the portion of creation area that appears to be slightly higher. This was before I think the as-built information was available, and where soils appear to lack sufficient organic material, or addressing the portion of creation area that appears to be slightly higher and where soils appear to lack sufficient organic material is more challenging. Rather than excavating this area down and adding appropriate wetland topsoil, a more efficient way to address the deficiencies in this area would be to supplement plantings of species more adaptable to the soil conditions. I would recommend supplemental plantings within the red outlined area on the landscape plan attached, and then he provides the species, and I I'll just steal the screen share again so I can show you. It basically aligns with what you were looking at there, but it's just that you can see that red outline. This is the area of deficient soil hydrology. And this is, as you can see from the plan that was being shared, where they're proposing the new plantings. So in this photo, I'll try and zoom in a little bit. You can see that they've got the pin oaks, and then you can see that there's a lot of herbaceous stuff in the actual wetland creation lower limit area. So it's this area back in here where the wetland plugs really just didn't establish very well because it doesn't have proper hydrology, and perhaps because the soil composition was not what it should have been. So this is on the other side where things were coming in pretty well. And then this is looking back up at the access drive with the train tracks over here. So this was early in the process. This was the end of year 1 of monitoring. And then you can kind of see over here, this is where we're getting into that area where the soils were probably not quite what they should have been. And I think this is looking outside of the creation area at the view of wetland creation looking northeast. So this is looking towards the center, I guess.
So this is Commissioner Boda. I just want to make sure I'm fully understanding. The plan is to take what was proposed to be a wetland mitigation area, which was at a 1-to-1 ratio, and instead of mitigating wetland for wetland, you're proposing to mitigate wetland for upland area. Is that my understanding correctly?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. I will just interject that it was more than 1-to-1 mitigation.
Okay, so that aside, is that what you're proposing? That the wetland mitigation area will not be, you're not proposing to work on that area to maintain it or to get it to a wetland area, but you're rather proposing to now shift to an upland area, a dry upland area.
Correct, Commissioner. Yeah, the obviously the key component for the wetlands aspect of it is that fluctuating groundwater table. The plan was developed obviously when it was originally approved with groundwater elevations in consultation with Davison Environmental and our grading, and it didn't come to fruition despite those best efforts. And as you guys all know, we had a very rainy year. We've had very intense storms that continues to go, and since that has happened, it still hasn't come to fruition. So as opposed to continuing to dig further to chase that groundwater elevation, I mix up this area and have it disturbed again for a long period of time, and also get into that contaminated area. We are looking to pivot to have it more of a kind of an upland area. I'd say if there was other circumstances, we would obviously just continue to dig and go and try to find it. But given the wet, crazy weather we have and the contamination, we'd rather get this more stabilized as a more conservation area, even if it isn't wetlands as originally intended.
What was the, Commissioner Boda, what was the total original wetland mitigation proposal, the square footage?
If you got to give me a second, Commissioner, I don't know that number off the top of my head unless Jamie, you do.
Let me look up the wetland mitigation plan, because that usually identifies what the direct impact and amount of mitigation area is. I do not have it off the top of my head.
We'll race to find it. I'll do the same.
Mm-hmm.
So I see total wetlands disturbed on this plan as 9,917 square feet. And then a proposed wetland creation at 20,480, which is a ratio of 2-to-1.
And right, that's right, 2-to-1, because we know that human-made wetlands are not as awesome as naturally made wetlands. So, and then this new, this thing that you're proposing, how much of that 20,000 would end up being wetland?
Commissioner, just give me a second and I can measure. We're proposing to replant a section of it, and obviously the other section, not the portions of the wetland creation.
Yeah, not the upland part. I don't want anything that isn't supporting wetland functions.
Yep, understood. One second. Let me just measure it before you get the exact number.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. While he's looking up that information, I'll just share section 7.9 of the regulations real quick, which talks about compensation or mitigation. So essentially, Branford regulations require that if you're filling or disturbing 750 square feet or more of wetland, you have to provide compensation. Since it's not possible to replace a mature functioning wetland or watercourse with a created habitat, wetland or watercourse creation will be at a ratio of at least 2-to-1 in area. The commission may reduce the ratio on a case-by-case basis, but cannot reduce the compensation below 1-to-1 in area. Compensation measures should be considered in the following order of priority. And this is per state statute. So this isn't something the Inland Wetland Commission of Branford decided they wanted to do. This is how the state has directed Inland Wetland and Watercourses Commissions to approach compensation. So the first one is restore pre-existing wetland or watercourse. Second, enhance degraded wetland or watercourse to improve functions and values they provide. And 3 is create productive wetlands or watercourse resources. And I think creation is third, in the sense that you come across kind of the problems that we're experiencing right now, where when you create a wetland, you don't always necessarily get what you were hoping to establish. So just something to keep in the back of your head as you're thinking about modifications to what was originally approved and what might be an appropriate compromise.
Sorry, guys, I'm getting a bogus number from my thing here. Hold on a second.
Is your scale set to something funky?
It's set right, but I'm getting an acre, which we never pretend that you guys would be ecstatic if I gave you an acre, but that's not right now. So, Commissioner, but I may have to come back and give you that, but let me just show you visually where it's at. So this area, and I'm sorry, the scale down here is correct, but it's not measuring out correctly on my plan, and I don't want to waste your guys' time. So the entire before, change this color so that pops, but that entire area in yellow, I'll change to red, was a proposed wetland creation at 9,000-ish number that I told you earlier. We're proposing to this area took. And so this area that's in this cross hatch pattern did take. I will get that number to you. For some reason, it's showing my plan significantly higher than I know that it is. And then this area in blue, saying we want to plant alternatively because it didn't take. So I can get that number for you. For some reason, not calculating correctly on this plan. It may be very close to that 1-to-1 if I'm just eyeballing areas between the green and the blue.
Okay, thank you. And still, Commissioner Boda, what else was, can you walk me through what were the, what other considerations have been in front of you all? So in other words, like, okay, this didn't work. All right, let's plant some, I don't mean to be glib, but like, let's plant some trees. Like, how did you get to trees as opposed to, you talked about the soil and not wanting to dig down deep, but I'm wondering what other alternatives you may have considered that get us closer to what was proposed and permitted.
Yes, I mean, obviously the first option was to manipulate the grades to get exactly what you guys wanted, and what we had shown on the plans is wetlands. But given the wetland scientist observation there, we thought even attempting that further by digging into this contaminated soil, it wouldn't gain what we wanted. We'd have another year or more of an area that isn't per your liking. So the second alternative is what we're here at now, is planting it to be a more dense vegetation and more supportive upland area adjacent to the area that was created and the existing two other wetlands that are original to the site. So really it was two options: was modify it to get to the wetlands, and since we didn't think that was going to be a viable solution, we pivoted to this is our second, I guess, our second choice. But happy to hear if you guys think we've missed something else.
Tell me if I misunderstood. So part of the consideration of not doing the continuing with the wetland was how long it was going to take? You didn't, like, it would have taken too long?
Well, Commissioner, we didn't want to attempt the wetland recreation and not have it work again, right? And have this area overexposed again, and not be stabilized in terms of its effect on the adjacent wetlands that are there, and knowing that the soil is contaminated and the groundwater isn't there. So we didn't want to attempt that and have it be detrimental to the wetlands that are, only a few feet away from this area.
Commissioner Basserman, I got a question, I guess, that this discussion keeps going around in a circle for me, because I wonder, how did we ever think that area that you identified in blue was going to be acceptable as a wetland environment? Given all the rain that we've had, etc., when we did those testing, how did we ever think that it would support the vegetation?
That was the, Chairman, that was my next step, which is like, I don't think, this was a long time ago, so excuse me if I don't remember the hydrology, but I don't think that it was ever groundwater fed. That was a perched wetland. And so, like, why wouldn't you create another perched wetland instead of expecting it to be fed from groundwater?
Okay. Yep.
Chairman and Commissioner, I guess it wasn't part of the original application. It was reviewed by other engineers at BL that aren't here anymore. And when Matt Davis, who guess is not here tonight, I can go back and discuss that and find out some of the history per your question. And obviously the wetlands that are there now are still thriving, right? We haven't seen a reduction in the existing wetlands. Portions of the wetland did take hold, right? So it was, I'd say, partially successful. It wasn't a completely misguided venture to say that it could be sustained by groundwater. It just wasn't as successful as we thought. As we know, it is a risk and gamble with man-made wetlands. But I'm certainly happy to come back and give you those numbers on what stuck and what didn't, and if creating a perched wetland is possibly an alternative that you want us to explore.
That would be, I'd be interested in that. Yeah.
This Commissioner Bassler, I think it would be also helpful if Mr. Davison could be on the Zoom meeting the next time we discuss this.
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. He just wasn't available tonight.
Yeah, I understand.
I wasn't expecting any action tonight. I know this is the first time I've been able to talk to you about this project, and
You're in Branford, man. There's always action here.
I'd get out of here in one meeting. So I will happily have him come to the next meeting and discuss further with you, because he really is the expert in wetland creation as compared to me.
Appreciate the honesty.
This is Commissioner Goklowski. My concern is, I wasn't on the commission when this was originally approved for the park, for the shopping center. But my concern is, you're talking about contaminated soil. How much of the area is contaminated around the inland wetlands proposed area? Or is all the soil contaminated in that area?
Commissioner, I can come back and give you kind of the extent of it from the environmental reports. I know it was a dumping ground for the construction for, I don't know if it was a railroad or nearby highways, but it's a historic.
Commissioner
dumping,
Goklowski, I know the history of that property, and I actually worked on that property in the early 70s, and when it was a car dealership. And prior to that, it was it's always been a car dealership through the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And it was a body shop. It was a dumping ground. Back in those days, they didn't dump the used oil in drums and have it carted away. It was just dumped in the back of the property. So I unfortunately, I do know the history of that property, but my concern is the contamination level of that property, because if that area is still contaminated, nothing's going to grow on it. I don't care what you do. So that's my concern at this time.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. I'll just quickly mention the area where the wetland creation was proposed and is implemented is an area where there was contamination, and I think that's part of the concern with doing further excavation. And I do think that was considered by the soil scientist when he made the planting recommendations, not only picking plants that would be more tolerant of the dry conditions, but also of harsh and challenging conditions. Not necessarily just because of potential contamination, but also because of, as you could probably see from the photo, the soil medium isn't exactly what it ideally probably should have been. So yeah.
Commissioner Goklowski again. So that property always flooded, and in that whole area when it was the triangle and stuff. If we had a heavy rain, that whole area was completely flooded. I mean, I can remember one time walking into work, and the whole showroom and the garage was, had a foot of water in it. So it had a high water table at one time. I will say that. So.
Right, and Commissioner, I think my initial concern when this didn't take was that we changed the hydrology of the site, but obviously some of the wetland did take. We haven't dried out the existing wetlands, right? So, there is some viability of the groundwater on areas of the site that remain, but it wasn't as successful. So.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. I'm going to screen share real quick. So just to recap for the commission, total area of disturbance was 9,917. 2-to-1 would be 19,834, and they were proposing 20,480. So I was able to get a quick estimate, rough estimate, and it looks like, of course, now the number's not there. 1 minute. About 10,000 square feet. So they do have about 1-to-1 of what they were hoping to have, or at least it appears they do. One of the comments I had is the grading is by and large comparable to what was proposed, but it is a little bit different. So I had suggested that if they're not proposing to regrade the area, for clarity, to use the as-built contours on this plan. So if they're looking to use the existing soil and grades that are out there, I think that would be helpful. So just for a quick look, this is what the wetland creation area as built looks like. So you can see that the elevations of the bottom are comparable to what was approved, which is, I believe, 22, 20, 2022. Yeah, 22. But I think that might just be helpful for the commission to consider. And let me just take a quick peek. Oh, and I address pros and cons of making the corrections versus, you know, what it is that's being proposed. And I don't know if the commission wants that in writing or if you're just okay with that being verbally addressed at the meeting where this is next reviewed.
This is Commissioner Boda. Jamie, I appreciated your putting together that list in the email, including the from address pros and cons, and I all the way down to if there are any items in construction sequence which have not occurred. That whole list, I appreciated your putting that together, and I think having that in writing is always really helpful. This is a lot of information to take in auditorily, and so it's helpful to have the text in front of us.
Commissioner Papantonis, I have a question. I wasn't on the commission when the original plan was approved, but everybody knew the soil was contaminated then, right?
Yes, there was an LEP, a licensed environmental professional, that was part of the project and oversaw the work that occurred in areas where there was contamination. So not to say that, you know, it should be a barrier to making corrections if corrections are warranted, but that they would probably likely need to loop an LEP back into the process if they're going to be doing more excavation back there.
So, but then we knew that it was going to be a challenge to take this area and turn it into wetlands because of the contaminated soil. Is that am I correct with that?
I think there were a lot of things that were discussed as part of the process.
This is Commissioner Boda. I wouldn't contextualize it that way. I would say that the applicant and the applicant's attorneys made a very strong argument to the commission that this mitigation area, you know, was more than 2 to 1 and no problem, like we're going to make it. So I'd say that was really going to be overseen by the appropriate environmental folks. So I mean, you could look back at the transcript, but that was really the tone, not so much around the contaminated. So I think there was a lot of kind of downplaying of the wetland itself and descriptions of it as like a bathtub because it was on rock. So I think that's where a lot of the conversation really focused on, and just that it was going to be mitigated with the creation of wetland. No problem. So
okay, I've Commissioner Papantonis, I have another question again. We approved some modifications to the site, correct? Because it wasn't able to be built as it was proposed. Like, wasn't a driveway moved or something? They weren't able to put something where it was supposed to be, so we had to modify the plan.
Me, Frederick, and the wetland agent. There were a couple of modifications throughout the process, including I think the elevation of the pad in the front was modified slightly to ultimately reduce the amount of earthwork. And I think originally there was a retaining wall where now there's a rock slope. And I think in regards to that, the driveway access to the rear modified slightly. I would say that modification it didn't modify where that road is immediately adjacent to the wetlands, from what I can recall. I think the biggest change was the surface of that road and making it traversable routinely for access to the train track in the back, and also for maintenance of the mitigation area. This is off the top of my head, mind you.
So we'll be discussing 1151 West Main Street at the next meeting. I guess the same question that Commissioner Boda broached previously. Do we want to do this in 2 weeks, or do we want to do this in April?
I would, yes. No, so, right, not the
Not the 28th.
same, right, not the 38 Howard, not the public day.
I don't want to throw a wrench in things, but
Oh,
you have
but you're gonna,
receipt that you're not gonna like the comment I have for. So, you know, as much as we want to push everything off, and I understand not wanting to overload a meeting, I guess I have kind of two divergent comments here. One is I want to make sure that they have enough time to actually respond to everything, because I don't want the commission to be looking at this again.
Right.
I have to look at it again. So if they need the time, and April 11th is going to allow them to get that information together, I think that would be ideal. We also want to try and, like was mentioned earlier, hopefully have something agreeable that can be implemented this spring planting season. I really understand not wanting to overload the March 28th meeting.
I'll be much quicker than them.
But
yeah, but we were here till almost 11 o'clock with that public hearing, and I, my understanding of going to 2 meetings a month is that some of those bigger issues we can do in one meeting, and then in the other meeting we can do the things that we know are going to be quicker. So like that has been a lengthy conversation, and I anticipate it will continue to be a lengthy conversation. And I have no interest in being here past 9:30 in these meetings if we're doing 2 meetings a month.
If I make it easier for you guys, I was here at that last meeting because 380 Shore Drive was the second thing on that application. It was a very interesting thing for me to listen to, yet very painful. So I'm happy to go to the 11th if I can avoid being part of that circus. I think the applicant would be okay with that as well.
Is that enough time for you to gather what you need?
Yeah, I mean, I think I just need to connect with Matt Davison and confirm some numbers, and maybe have some conversations with Jamie prior to. So I'm happy to do that this month to then have you guys have, or Jamie and you guys to have something for 2 weeks in April before the 11th. I'm perfectly okay with that. I think that's enough time for us to do what you'd asked tonight.
And we don't need, this is Commissioner Bassett, we don't need any extensions or anything, Jamie?
Nope, this was a modification request that we've received just now. There's no time frame for a modification request.
Great.
It is in response to, the permit compliance stuff that we've been having going on. And my biggest concern would be making sure that hopefully we can get them doing whatever corrective actions this growing season.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bruton.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Yep, take care. 8 Sawmill Road, Inland Wetland, 2012-01, new home. Permit compliance and request to remove fallen trees in a deed restricted area.
All right. Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agents. This, as referenced, is a single family proposal for a single family home. They're looking to get started on the project soon. There is an area on the site plan identified for a deed restriction. The deed restriction has not been filed yet, so we don't have language to reference. However, it was approved with that in place. Within that deed restriction area, there's kind of twofold. One, the property owner would like to remove 2 trees that have fallen over and are dead. And generally speaking, removal of any vegetation living or dead from a deed restriction area needs to be approved by the commission. So I said that should come before the commission. And I did kind of fast track this because it also came to my attention that the landscape or the tree removal entity brought their equipment on site, was not aware of the restriction area and had put their equipment within the restriction area. There's some ruts that should be addressed. So I just wanted to make sure that that's addressed in a way that is satisfactory to the commission. So I've got the contractor present who, once he saw the equipment, contacted them and told them they needed to move their equipment, and then told me about it so that we could get it addressed. So they're here to help answer any questions you have for that process, for the repair of the ground disturbance and for the request of the removal of the trees. So I will.
Do you have any photos?
I'm sorry, Peter, you sound
Do you have
very.
any-
Oh, there we
Do you
go.
have, do you have any photos of the
Yes,
area?
I think I'm going to start off with the site plan, and then I'm going to show some photos. Let me just close out some of this other stuff so I don't accidentally flip around too much. Okay, so I don't know if the commissioners are familiar with 8 Sawmill Road, but this is on the north side of Sawmill, and the rear of the property abuts, I believe, a property off of Old New England Road. So Sawmill Road is here. The proposed house is on the eastern portion of the site, septic, southern portion up by the road. And then you can kind of see this, this dashed line. That's the silt fence, and also, generally speaking, the limits of, it says limits of disturbance will be a deed restriction and field staked and markers placed by this office being the surveyor engineering firm. So I'm gonna jump over to so the area of where the ruts are, I think, is approximately in this area here. I'm not entirely sure if it's in the wetland or adjacent to the wetland. It's definitely an area that is wet. So these are the 2 trees that have fallen that the property owner would like to remove. My understanding, and we can hear from the contractor and he can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that they're looking to cut the trees, remove the upper portion of the tree, and either allow the stump portion to fall back into place or help it push it back over if need be, so that there's minimal ground disturbance, soil disturbance, but so that they don't have the trees in the rear yard that they would be looking at. And my understanding is that the equipment would be staged outside of the wetland area. Again, contractor can correct me if I'm wrong. Here you can see this is the limit of disturbance. You can see there's a little bit of woody debris piled up here, which I've told them that once they get the go ahead, they should get pulled out. And then, so here's the area where the equipment came in. And we had talked in the field about just kind of having equipment outside of the wet areas, reaching in with the bucket and kind of smoothing it back out so that the ruts are not as visible, and we have a more a condition more reflective of what it would have been like before the equipment drove in. And I think it would make sense to have that work done sooner rather than later, as long as the equipment can stay where it's dry. So that way, once everything starts popping in the next, week or 2, hopefully it can pop without any further disturbance. And here's a little bit further back. You can see this is where the equipment came in, the 2 trees. So I'm sure they're looking to go after those 2 trees. And then here, for context, you can see the stakes with the yellow flags. That's where the silt fence is proposed. The truck or the equipment was pulled in somewhere around here. And these are the 2 trees. And I'm standing kind of right up by Sawmill Road taking this picture. So.
Okay.
Questions from the commission? Or do you want to hand it over to the contractor?
Yeah, well, I guess to the contractor, property owner. So it sounded like, Jamie, the idea was to cut those trees and then take the bulk of the tree off property. What, like, I guess I'm wondering why not just cut it and then let the trunk of the tree and those upper branches end up where they are And I mean, the root base up that creates, you know, the kind of topography that we see in New England, that's pretty typical in a wooded area. So I'm not sure why in a deed restricted area anybody would feel the need to do that. So I guess I'm just curious.
I asked the same question. I don't feel like it's my place to respond. So I think that's a good question for the contractor.
I think
You're muted.
I think the floor is yours, sir.
Hello, Nick Fisher, on behalf of the owner. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Loud and clear.
I think the owner just wanted to clean that area up because the trees were unsightly in their present state.
Yeah, so this is Commissioner Boda. I think that folks have really different ideas about what's sightly and unsightly. And in deed restricted areas that are meant to be left in a natural state, trees fall down, they provide really valuable environment, and they return the nutrients back. And so, like, I can see for safety purposes, and that tends to be when tree cutting is allowed, tends to be really around safety issues, not aesthetics. And so I could see wanting to lop the trunk of the tree so that it's not a hazard for someone who might be walking back there, somebody who might be exploring. But I from an ecological standpoint, I don't know why you would remove the mass of the trunk of the tree or return the root base to an upright position.
Okay. I guess that's up to you guys to decide then.
Mr. Commissioner Bassman, Commissioner Boda, I guess what I gathered from your comment is cut it at your recommendation is cut it at I guess, where the root base is, and just let the tree fall and deteriorate over time. Is that my understanding?
This is Commissioner Boda. I think that they can cut it such that it just, it could be just a little bit above the base of the tree. I think, we do within the deed restricted areas, safety is the primary concern. So I could see, like I said, not wanting that huge trunk hanging suspended up in the air. And so cutting it could be cut in, 2, 3, or 4 places so that it just ends up on the ground in a safe way. Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
So one comment that I do want to provide for the commission, I'm not sure that it would impact flows through this area at all, but when the commission last reviewed the permit application, flooding concerns were raised from neighbors. So I guess that would be one concern I think that would fall within the commission's purview, is whether or not, and they might not know, we might not really know until once it's been cut, whether or not it's going to be causing a blockage issue. But if it's blocking flows and changing where water is going, I could see that potentially being an issue.
Sure, but this is Commissioner Boda, like, where are there's flowing water through here?
I think it's only when it's been raining a lot, because I was out there this Wednesday, so it hadn't been raining recently, but obviously we've had a lot of rain in the last week and a lot of places are still very wet. So I'm not saying it would be an issue. I'm just saying that's the outlier concern that I could think of.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't, it doesn't give the appearance that there's any kind of, even not from this picture, maybe from another angle, that there's anything intermittent running through there. And there's like a ton of brush piles. And so I don't know that two fallen trees are going to be the thing that causes somebody to flood if there's not an actively running stream all the time.
Yeah, I think the flowing water is located further back in the wetland area.
We could always take a look at it. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to doing that.
Commissioner Goklowski, are they proposing to remove those brush piles? It looks like they made those brush piles to remove them. Is that correct?
That
That's
is
correct.
my understanding. Yeah, okay.
Were you going to remove them, or were you going to chip them and leave the product on the ground?
I think the idea would be to chip them and possibly remove the chips, or use the chips to back up the erosion control measures, the silt fence.
This is Commissioner Boda. So wait, I missed something. Was that brush all in the conservation area and now piled for removal?
No, it was in the area closest to Sawmill Road, in that area that looks sort of cleared right now.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. When I was out there, I did see that a couple of small saplings had been removed. I only saw two, because like I said, the equipment kind of came in back through here. So there were, I think, here and maybe here. There are two small, here and here, two small saplings in the conservation area. But that was the only direct evidence of vegetation removal that I saw in the conservation restriction area. I think, I mean, obviously you can see some of it's been cut, and there was some other small stuff cut up closer to Sawmill Road within the limits of clearing. But I think some of it also was just kind of fallen stuff that they were clearing up in, anticipation of getting.
Commissioner Goklowski, Jamie, can you go back to the picture where you said that they had the equipment was was in the property, where they had, it looked like it was wet? Yeah.
Right here.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah, they would have to bring the equipment into the restriction area, but kind of keep it up here in this area here and reach in with the bucket to kind of smooth it out, unless the commission feels that it's not warranted, and would perhaps, but I think they can make minor corrections that will help reduce long-term impacts with minimal
Gonna
further.
turn it into a mosquito trap. That's all that's gonna be in there, is mosquitoes. So I do think it makes sense to fix it. Is it something that could be fixed by hand instead of with another large machine? We've done that, and I feel like bigger spaces where, although this is not a wetland, right?
I think this is just outside of the wetland, but I don't know. I didn't measure it off. I got back in the office and I realized I probably should have. But for context, again, these are the fallen trees, which are on the far side of it. And you can see the limits of disturbance. It's 30 feet from this, or sorry, I guess that's not actually the silt fence. We'll say it's 25 feet from the silt fence to the wetland area. So 25 feet back from here. And then interestingly, I was taking another look at the at the site plan, and test pit 3, which is located approximately where I think the activity occurred, test pit 3, test pit 4, it says heavily modeled wet throughout wetland type soils, even though it's not within the wetland area. And then 4 also says modeled wet. So I don't think it's necessarily in the wetland, but it's certainly in an area that has been wet and will continue to be wet, I'm sure.
Yeah, so maybe it would be better to have somebody hand do that. It's not a huge space. It doesn't look like, this is Commissioner Boda, I don't know, maybe we can take a look at it, but that my inclination would be that that's something to be done by hand, especially if it's got, I'm very curious about that wetland delineation. If you've got wetland soils up at those test pits.
Yeah, I was surprised to see that note. I don't think this application was looked at with quite the same level of scrutiny when it came in 2020, because it was by and large similar to an application that was approved in 2008. So I think
maybe the, you know, the wetland line changed. They do that, you know, if the hydrology, if there's more water coming into the area, we know that the rain events have gotten bigger, and you know, there's a lot of changes to those rainfall numbers, and it wouldn't be surprising that there's some additional wetland creation.
Commissioner Goklowski, my question is, these trees that have fallen, is that technically on the property owner's property, or is it on just the wooded area adjacent to the property?
yeah, no,
That's the property owners.
yeah, they're probably located about in this area here, and the property line is back here.
Okay.
Doesn't quite show where it goes, but I'm pretty sure it's follows in this direction, and looks like the western boundary line is also off the site plan.
Commissioner Bass,
The trees
Jamie,
are in
are
the
we?
wetland?
Go ahead.
The trees are in the wetland?
Again, I don't know.
They're by the test pits.
They're approximately in this location. They're near the edge of the wetland. Whether they're actually in the wetland or not, I'm not sure. I didn't measure. I think this one certainly is. This one
is out there.
I mean, where they are, I mean, where the equipment had driven in was the wettest spot that I saw. I didn't walk further back into the wetland complex. But whether or not it's actually in the wetland or not, I'm not sure. This one, like I said, I think that the base of the tree is, this one I'm not this one might be outside.
So this is Commissioner Boda. Long and short, I would say no to the request of pushing the roots back down. Yes to cutting and dropping the tree in place. I think as for the repair to that area, it should be done, and it should be done with by hand tools. I don't think stuff should be driving around back there. Yeah, I think that's all of it, right, Jamie?
That addresses all the things that I brought up. Do any other commissioners have anything to add or feel differently?
It's Commissioner Bass, but just a question, Jamie, as we have run across deed restricted areas from time to time, are we consistent with kind of a philosophy of en natural as it applies to a deed restricted area, that we try to minimize whatever changes we look to induce in a deed restricted area? Are we consistent?
Yeah, so I think I started off by saying typically the restriction language has not been reviewed or filed yet, but typically language will say any removal of vegetation, living or dead, requires review from the agency. And I think Commissioner Boda touched on it pretty well, where generally speaking, issues of safety, you know, whether or not the tree's going to fall or cause drainage issue, are the things the commission is generally looking at. And or like if there's a possibility of impacting another living tree that you want to perhaps try and help preserve. So like this tree is caught up in the crush this tree here. So, I mean, as Boda mentioned before, trees fall in the woods all the time. Tree could be fine, or who knows, but those are the kinds of things I think the commission is generally usually looking at.
And Mr. Chair, this is Commissioner Boda. I don't ever remember us signing off on work in a deed restricted area for aesthetics because of the purview, the nature of our responsibility to the town and to the state.
And there are some plantings proposed which will help, provide some aesthetic benefits to the property owner. And, perhaps if they want to look at doing some additional plantings once everything's done, and, if the cut trees on the ground are still bothering them, that might be something to consider.
Okay. Any other comments from the commission?
This is Commissioner Ormrod. Yeah, I tend to agree with Commissioner Boda. I think, dead and dying trees do provide a lot of valuable ecological benefits. So I would like to see the material stay. So yeah, to cut the tree and drop it in place, I'm okay with. And sort of leaving that stump. I don't think that should be pushed back. That's going to require machine tracking through there. It obviously seems wet. So yeah, any way to limit heavy equipment from going back there, I think that would be best.
This is Commissioner Basserman. Jamie, do we, close the loop on this with a letter? How do we get the information out with the comments that we've collected this evening regarding what should be done?
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent. I certainly think I should follow up in writing. Whether you guys think a formal letter is warranted or an email would be sufficient, I'm not sure. Although the actual property owner doesn't use email, so perhaps a letter would be appropriate. And just for clarity, if when the tree is cut, the stump does happen to flip back on its own, you're not asking them to flip it back up, right?
That's a bridge.
Whatever it does kind of thing.
Yeah.
All right.
Commissioner Goklowski, I think if they cut the tree right, it's going to pop back up in its upright position, that stump anyway. So, I mean, I've seen that happen before. It happened on a piece of property that I owned. They cut the tree and the root just went boop right back up. So,
all righty. Item C under other business.
Before we move on, can we just make sure that the contractor is all set?
I'm all set.
Thank you.
Stick to the plan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have revisions to our regulations regarding Connecticut Stormwater Quality Manual and the Connecticut Guidelines for Soil Erosion and Sediment Control. It was a rather voluminous document that Jamie put in the Dropbox. I guess at this point, Jamie, you're looking for where do we put this in our working agendas?
Yes. So we discussed this, I want to say in January. I was to bring it back to the commission in March. Obviously, I didn't want to bring it to our March 28th meeting. So I was supposed to provide an update. So the update is I've drafted language. I've worked with the engineering department to draft the language. I think we've come up with a pretty good draft for the commission to consider. The next step would be doing the regulation revision, which we would have to, well, first of all, see if the commission is satisfied enough with the language at this point to move forward with that. And if not, we can maybe schedule a meeting down the line where the commission wants to touch base and provide comments. Although I would recommend that if you have comments, you just let the office know. Don't let the full commission know, just to tell staff, and we can work on it for whatever meeting we decide to set this next for. And then once we get to the point where we feel we have the language, we would send it up to DEEP. We would notice a public hearing, hold a public hearing. Hopefully that language will have already been worked out, and we would only be addressing any public comment, and then adopt and implement. So I believe it's the end of this month where the stormwater quality manual changes are effective, and there's a grace period until the end of September. So I would recommend that the commission try to have the changes adopted prior to the end of September. It's my understanding that DEEP is kind of suggesting that commissions adopt the regulations sooner rather than later. But also, you know, there's a process to go through. So I would say the absolute earliest we could do is April 25th. We've already talked about loading up our May 28th and April 11th meeting. So I don't know that we need to rush. And so the question is, when do you want to pick this back up again? Do you want to have a workshop meeting prior to having it sent up to DEEP and holding the public hearing? Or do you just want to go for it, kind of thing? And if anyone wants me to take a step back and go over what it is we're actually trying to achieve by doing these reg revisions, let me know. But I do also have documents in the Dropbox that you can review.
This is Commissioner Bassman. Jamie, have you looked at any depth with the manuals that just came out? I mean, I assume you did because you got some redlined changes regarding the regulations.
Jamie Frederick.
And would you call that change substantive or tinkering?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. So I've looked at the new manuals. I did not read the new manuals from cover to cover. They're like 400 pages each. But I skimmed through them, used, you know, find certain words, and Kevin with the engineering department has been sitting in on a lot of the webinar trainings. I've sat in on a couple. He's been following all of the stuff that's been coming out regarding the changes, and he's been great. He's looked at the reg revisions a couple of times because it's a process. You never get it right the first time. And so I would say that for the most part, we're just updating it to reflect the new revision date. And one of the comments that Kevin had was to maybe remove the date and just say as amended or as updated, which I think kind of makes sense. And then the one I would say truly, well, there's kind of two substantive changes would be that the water quality volume is increasing from the first inch to 1.3 inches. And that's based on increased rainfall intensity for the most part. And then the other one I would say is that the revised stormwater manual requires applicants to consider low impact development, whereas before it was really just kind of a recommendation. So those are the two big things.
Bassman, Jamie, wasn't there also a change from 40% to 50% on one of the items?
So jumping back to that water quality volume and the 1.3 inches, for new development and sites with 40% or less directly connected impervious area. So if less than 40% of the site is directly connected to the stormwater system, you have to retain and treat on site the full water quality volume. Per the MS4 permit, which the town of Branford does have, for redevelopment on sites with more than 40% direct connection, they're allowed a reduction of that water quality volume. They only have to retain 50% of it. In the regs, the language that I have proposed is 75%. And that's because the last time the commission looked at their stormwater regulations, staff suggested that you consider whether or not you wanted to incorporate something reflective of the stormwater, or sorry, of the MS4 permit. And the commission decided to kind of meet the middle ground and not reduce it to 50%, but to understand that it's harder when, you know, you've already got intense development on site to retain and infiltrate the full water quality volume. So instead of 50%, it's 75. And the commission could decide you want to change it to 50 or you could leave it at 75, but I just left it at 75 based on the last conversation that the commission had.
This is Commissioner Basserman. I guess there's enough material that's would be impacting our regulations that I think I like the idea of a workshop where we can just focus in on this for some period of a meeting, and whether that's the only thing we talk about at that meeting, or when there's a light agenda, we talk about it. But I don't think we want to wait past May to start those reviews.
Jamie Frederick, inland wetland agent. I might suggest that we actually table this item and jump back to it after we quickly overview the applications for receipt. Just because I think it might help the commission get a better understanding of what your future
workload
schedule might look like. Yeah. Work for everyone?
That works for me. Yep.
Okay. So let me just double check. Applications for receipt. We've got IW number. Do you want to read it or you want me to? I'm stealing your thunder.
You're on a roll. Go ahead.
IW number 240202, 1 through 17 Beacon Hill Road and Beacon Hill Road, formerly part of property known as 83 Rose Hill Road, new active adult residential community. So we don't have anyone present to give a presentation, but I did want to let the commission know I do expect the commission will want to hold a public hearing for this application. It was previously approved as, I want to say, a 10-lot subdivision. I might be off by a lot there. And so what they're looking to do is, it was actually, the subdivision was filed on the land records. They're looking to merge all of the lots that are still owned in common back into one lot, and they're proposing the adult residential community. So there was direct wetland impact proposed as the permit that has been issued, and there is, as part of the permit that is being seeked at this time. So that's part of why I think the commission is going to want to have a public hearing on this, and I just wanted to let you know so that hopefully you can take a look at the site plans and the materials prior to the next meeting, and the commission can look to schedule things that you're going to want to schedule at that meeting. I think it might be, I mean, alternatively, you could, yeah, I think it would be best for everyone to look at it and be prepared for that discussion at the March 28th meeting. Just of the scheduling. Obviously, we're not going to have a presentation if you're going to be holding a public hearing. You know, anything that would be for consideration of the review of the application should be on the record of the public hearing, if that's going to be the case.
This is Commissioner Basserman. Just a quick look at the plan. Is this a application that is worthy of a site walk?
I think the site walk is going to be something the commission would want to do as well. I'm certainly going to want to do a site walk because I have not been on the property. I think it would be helpful, and that's something else to consider for scheduling potentially at the next meeting. The other thing I'll throw it out there just as a thought is whether or not a peer review would be appropriate. There was no peer review the first time. That's not to say whether it's appropriate this time or not. But, you know, I think it's a project of the scale where it's at least worth asking that question, whether or not it's needed. That's going to be up to the commission. So, yeah.
This is Commissioner Boda. Generally, on large projects, I would be a very strong proponent of us, and there's going to be a public hearing securing peer review. We do not have the technical expertise that we have had in the past. I don't know if anyone on the commission is an expert in hydrology, soil science, engineering, civil engineering. So that is a luxury we no longer have. So I think it is in our best interest to make sure that we have peer review. So that means an RFP would have to go out soon.
Yeah, so I think, if that's something the commission is thinking might be appropriate, thinking about the type of review, the type of professionals, so that way we can get that stuff processed as soon as possible. Usually the commission tries to get the peer review response prior to opening the public hearing, if a peer review is determined to be appropriate.
Commissioner Basserman, given that, it almost seems like at the next meeting, not April, the meeting at the end of the
yes,
month.
I think, unfortunately, this is, you're just going to be reviewing the process. So it's not like you're going to be diving into the review of the application. The applicant will be present, and I think the commission should have a discussion on those 3 topics: public hearing, site walk, peer review, whether or not they're appropriate, because that's going to kind of govern the timeline for reviewing the application. And I do think that particularly if the commission thinks they want to have a peer review conducted, that pretty much needs to be determined at the next meeting.
Jamie, this is Commissioner Bodo, would you be able to pull up past peer reviews to just in terms of some guidance on the scope of the review? I don't want to miss something. It's typically sediment erosion control, stormwater, wetland impacts, but especially when there's a lot going on, I just don't want to.
We were working on back when we were doing them quite frequently for a little while there. Yeah. So I can look that up and look up some of the peer reviews to make sure it's comprehensive.
So, and for just for the educational purposes for commissioners who haven't had an application with peer review, basically the commission asked for peer review, and we put out a request for a proposal or an RFP outlining what it is that we want reviewed, and then different firms will submit proposals to do the work. They'll give us a scope of time and what they can do for us. Then we would pick a peer review group. The peer reviewers have access to all the materials. Then they give us findings as well. The applicant pays for the peer review. We give part of the reason for the request for proposal is we need to tell the applicant how much the peer review is going to cost. And then the peer reviewers essentially are working or subcontracting to the town in order to give us the information and the expertise that we have. If you recall, the commission can only make rulings based on expert findings. And so we want to make sure that in these bigger cases, we have experts that are also working in the interest of the town, so that we can make a judgment about which expert is really swaying us one way or the other. We can't make a decision against an expert without another expert opposing opinion. So it just gives us more information.
Commissioner Boda, thank you for that clarification, because in the almost 2 years I've been on this commission, I've never run across this.
Consider yourself lucky.
Well, it does get, we will get, the hardest part with one of these is that there tends to be a tremendous amount of documentation. And so this is where really a lot of the burden falls on Jamie and Katie to help us kind of keep track of the timeline and the materials. And it's a big job. So thanks in advance, you two.
Jamie, quick question. I just glanced at the information. How many residents are they proposing to have live in this community on this 59-acre property? Did they say?
They did.
Yeah. Did the plans.
I want to say 1 minute. They say it in the
right.
I thought it was 22.
That's why I was thinking too, Katie. 20. I think
Yeah.
it's 22.
So it's not a very large field. So see, I don't know if most of you know or not, but I'm an entertainer also, and I perform at probably 120 to 150 different assisted living and nursing home facilities around the state of Connecticut and Massachusetts. So I'm pretty aware of these types of communities and the setup and what goes on. You know, so, but that's not, so it's a relatively very small community then.
I think it's more like a 55 plus kind of community.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so it says active adult, so it's not assisted living.
So it's going to be like a high-end apartment complex for senior citizens like me.
I will let the applicant confirm or correct at a later time because it's not my project. All right.
All right. And we have now Parish Farm Road in the wetland 240301, 72 Parish Farm Road and 10 High Meadow, grading and new barn. And we're also going to be, I guess, discussing the notice of violation for this same property.
Yeah, so the notice of violation, Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, the notice of violation kind of was left off with submit an application. So we've now received an application. I've talked a little bit with the homeowner. I've not touched base with Criscola Engineering since the application has been submitted, although it looks like they are present. So with that in mind and the agenda for our next meeting, I think it might be beneficial to just quickly take a look at this and see if it's something you might be okay with it being reviewed administratively. I have not looked at it a whole lot yet. One thing I did notice is that there's no stormwater management plan proposed. I would certainly be looking to have that added and be part of the review process. And if anything in that change triggered something that I thought had come back to the commission, I could certainly bring it back to the commission. But I think if they provide stormwater management, so that way we know that there's not concentrated flows going down the proposed 3-to-1 slope, that it might fall within the scope of agent review. The closest activity is about 60 to 65 feet away from a wetland pocket area. And I did talk with the homeowner just to confirm that he wasn't looking to remove any vegetation beyond what was necessary to establish the slope. He said no. He said he actually was hoping to plant some trees on the slope. They're not shown on the site plan, but every time I've touched base with him, he's been very adamant about wanting to kind of remove some of the vegetation that's not doing so well and put in some new vegetation that he can enjoy. So is the commission okay with taking a quick look and yeah?
Yeah.
Should I screen share, or assuming Criscola Engineering's here, do you want to screen share and you can probably go over it faster than I can?
Yeah, I'll give a quick rundown. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, Jeremy Gannon from Criscola Engineering on behalf of Mr. Nuzzo. Just share my screen here. Okay. Everybody see that?
Yes.
All right. This is the proposed project, and as Jamie already highlighted, it will be for the construction of a 30 by 40 foot barn located up in this area. As for the notice of violation, the owner was unaware about some of the regulations pertaining to the 100-foot upland review area, but we're here to rectify that issue now. Currently, the site has silt fence has been installed. It's this line right here. The slope with the fill that has been brought in previously has been grassed and is in a stable condition. Going forward, he's just looking to finalize this and get this to a 3-to-1 slope, which would require us to relocate the silt fence and extend it down slope a little bit more, and also a little bit of gravel would be brought in over here just for access to the barn. And yeah, that's pretty much, a little overview of it.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. So the closest wetland area is a small wetland pocket that has remained. There used to be a wetland complex that was altered when Valley Brook Road South was installed. So there's that little pocket there, and that's where it's about 60 to 65 feet away from the proposed limits of disturbance. And then there's this other offsite wetland located to the west, and you can see the line for the upland review area terminates approximately in this location here. So they are pulling the activity slightly closer to the wetland to provide a more long-term stable slope that will comply with the zoning regulation requirements. And I think it says to be seeded with New England erosion control mix. So again, like I said, I would want to see, given the size of the structure in particular, and the fact that it is a pretty large slope that's being proposed, some sort of stormwater management for that roof area. But I think if they add that, and it's not encroaching any further towards the wetlands, that it might fall within something that could be reviewed administratively. But particularly given the fact that this started off as a notice of violation, I wanted to give the commission the opportunity to weigh in on that.
Commissioner Goklowski, Jamie, this property owner, he's been very cooperative with you since the notice of violation. Is that correct?
Yeah, he installed silt fence, seeded the slope, had soil scientists come out and flag the wetlands. It took a little bit of time to get the survey based on, I think cost and also just availability. But he did stabilize everything on site and stopped any further work in response to the initial correspondence, and has now at this point submitted an application. So he has been very responsive.
Okay, thank you.
This is Commissioner Basserman. Jamie, what in particular regarding the stormwater management addendum are you looking to review?
I would want to see the retention of the first inch that we normally would be looking at. It's 40 feet by 30 feet, so it's not a small structure. I mean, that's almost the size of a small house, or is the size of a small house. So some sort of stormwater management, whether, whatever it is they want to propose, I'm not going to try and design it for them. Whether it's infiltrators, rain garden, what have you. But something like that, and kind of details on how it will overflow, just to make sure, again, it's not a steep slope, but it's not a gentle slope either. Just making sure that that slope's going to remain stable long term.
As a follow-up question, in terms of that slope, was that graded with everything on site, or was there fill brought in to achieve that slope?
Material was brought on site, which is what triggered the notice of violation.
Mm-hmm. So is it my understanding, given that this is an application for receipt, that we're hoping, I guess, at the next meeting, and I don't know whether that's the end of the month or the April meeting, that the plan be updated to show the stormwater management, and at that point, the commission can decide whether it's a commission vote or agent approval?
So, I mean, at that point, it might as well be a commission review. So I guess what I'm asking is, with the understanding that if the stormwater management plan isn't something I'm comfortable with reviewing and I want to bring it back to the commission, I can always do that. Is the commission okay with me making that judgment call on whether or not it needs to come back to the commission once the plan has been revised? Or does the commission want this to come back to the full commission? And if so, I don't think the homeowner's in any particular rush. I think he's just trying to comply with what he's been told he needs to do. So whether you want to continue it to the March 28th meeting, March 28th meeting, or the April 11th meeting, would probably be worth discussing.
Commissioner Boda, I think it can go, I think it can go to agent approval, and if there's concerns, I mean, how far is the toe of the slope to the corner of that wetland?
About 60 to 65 feet, and then you can see it gets flat.
It's very flat. So I would say, you know, unless when you're doing it, you run into some particular issue, I think agent approval is appropriate for this.
Commissioner Gokowski, I agreed. Since the property owner's been very responsive to the commission's concerns since day one, I feel very comfortable having Jamie oversee, and if there's an issue, bring it back to the commission.
Sounds good to me. Anyone feel differently?
You don't need a vote on that, do you?
Nope, just general consensus, and I'm hearing crickets, so I'm going to take that as general consensus. So yeah, I'll work with the applicant and their design team, and hopefully the next time you see it, it's under agent approvals.
Agent approvals.
Thank you guys very much.
Agent approvals, none currently.
Correspondence. Yeah, before we move on, let's just jump back real quick, and you guys can decide to just continue to table it if you want. But the regulation revisions, do you want to schedule a date to try and pick that back up, or do you want to schedule a date to reassess and schedule a date?
This is Commissioner Boda. I'm very excited about the new stormwater manual on the sediment erosion controls. If you haven't looked at it, there's a webinar. You're missing out. You don't have to look through the whole manual. Really, there's just a section that it's beautiful, and they give a lot of guidance on these things. So, and the webinar, you can watch it on speed and a half, so it doesn't take the full hour. Do that all the time. I think making the revisions as quickly as possible would be to our benefit for sure. And I would say that maybe if we can pick this up in the end of April, the second meeting in April. I think that, and then in the meantime, just I'll take a look at the language that Jamie has drafted. It's not a full reg revision like we've done in the past. It's really targeted, so hopefully it won't really take us all that long.
Yeah, Jamie,
we're not talking about money, so it's stuff that we like to talk about.
Wetland agent, we tried to just keep it focused on the changes relevant to the two manual changes. And I mean, theoretically, because our regs do say as updated, the changes would be reflected in the regulations, but it just adds clarity, particularly given the fact that the commission has the calculation from the old stormwater quality manual, which has now been superseded and replaced. So I do think it would be helpful to update. So just for clarity, April 25th, that would be like a workshop type, feedback type discussion. Okay. Just want to make sure because planning. Yeah, and in the Dropbox, and we'll leave the information in the Dropbox for a little bit here. But in the Dropbox for the reg revision, we've got the language with track changes and without track changes. Just because it can be hard to read with track changes sometimes, but you also want to know what's new and what's the same. We also have a hyperlink directly to Yukon Clear website with 3 different webinars regarding the stormwater changes. So if you want to check those out, you can. I also have a brief reference document that I could reference in case commissioners had any questions. I was trying to pick the things that might be kind of key points from, and there's some screenshots of some of the slides from those trainings in case you don't necessarily have time to go through the whole training, but want maybe some quick references, although without context, they might not be very helpful.
Amy, can I ask you a quick question?
Yep.
So you know, there's been a lot for the stormwater manual. There's a lot of guidance and support, and there's really not for its sad little sister, the sediment and erosion control manual that was also new. And so I'm wondering if that is also going to impact or could potentially impact pieces in our regs.
Sure. So Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent, I don't think so for the most part, because we only reference the erosion control manual. We don't reference anything in it per se. We just say that you have to comply with it. That being said, there have been some updates. I've only really looked at the very beginning of it, but both manuals at the beginning, they kind of outline the things that have changed. I think the stormwater quality manual does a little bit of a better job of it. The erosion control manual is kind of just a list of bullet points. But I also, if you look at that reference document, I took all of those bullet points and I put them on the last page. It's basically talking about updates in standard practices, and like one that jumped out at me is silt socks. They weren't really a recommendation before, but they are now, and we've come across that in our review process. That was one of the modifications we had out at 1151 West Main Street, was the request to use a silt sock in lieu of a silt fence. They can, in some cases, they can be a better product because they're easier to bring in, and also they cause less ground disturbance. You don't have to dig to tow it in. So it just kind of highlights those differences, and I think that will be beneficial because you know, as we see these new practices being proposed in plans, it helps demonstrate why and that it is a good practice. So yeah, that's the long and short of it. And if any of you have any questions, you can reach out to staff and we can try and help provide clarification or have it ready for the next time around.
Anybody have anything else for this evening?
I will just put a plug for cause really quick. Next year, go. You never know. I put my name in for a raffle. Jamie, Matt, I don't know if you saw the raffle, but I won a data logger. And so go and you might win yourself a data logger.
Who could refuse that? Motion to adjourn here?
Peter, did you want to briefly mention those bills?
You know, there's been a lot of bills up in the short-term legislature this year that affect wetlands. Training is one of the issues. The elimination of inland wetland having some jurisdiction over DOT projects, as well as projects associated with the state. There's been testimony from the environmental groups to those committees that are reviewing the material. And I think it's about a week and a half to see what comes out of committee. Hopefully a lot of those that are dealing with climate change and inland wetland issues, etc., will not survive all of the comments from the different environmental groups, but you never know. Didn't know if anybody wanted to see a copy of those bills and the Kakiwik testimony. I can put that through Jamie, I guess, on the Dropbox, or send it directly, Jamie, if that's appropriate.
I'd say it might be easiest if you want to let us know what you want to send out, and then we can maybe send it out via email.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody not want to receive that? I have no problem with only sending 2 instead of 7, or whatever.
Well, knowledge is power, so.
Just keep in mind their proposals at this point. So, you know, whether or not they'll move forward is to be seen. But also, you know, it can be interesting to see what's being proposed and the testimony that's been provided.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
And I'd say good night. And
good night.
It's 9:13, so we met Commissioner Boda's earmarked date and time. Maybe
That's
next
everyone.
meeting, maybe next meeting, not so much.
Yeah.
That gives us 20 extra minutes next time. I think.
Yeah. Take
All right.
care.
Good night, everyone.
This program was brought to you in part through the support of the Town of Branford. Watch town meetings and other videos on demand at BranfordTV.org.